In July of 1518, a woman walked into a narrow street in Strasbourg, started dancing, and didn't stop for almost a week. Within 2 months, around 400 people were doing the same thing, and some of them were dying on their feet. Strasbourg in 1518 was a crowded, walled city in the Holy Roman Empire, packed into the curve of the Rhine. It had been a brutal year. Harvests had failed, bread prices were climbing, and a new wave of smallpox was working through the poorer neighborhoods. On a hot day in mid-July, a woman the chronicles call Frau Troffea stepped out of her home and into the street. Without music, without warning, without saying a word, she began to dance. Her neighbors watched. At first it was just strange. A grown woman spinning and stamping in the dirt with a blank expression, ignoring the people calling her name. She danced through the afternoon. She danced through the night. By the next morning, her shoes were soaked through with blood, and she was still going. Her husband tried to drag her inside. She wrenched away and kept dancing. By the fourth day, a crowd had formed around her, and that's when it all fell into chaos. Within a week, more than 30 people had joined her. Bakers, washerwomen, day laborers. They didn't seem joyful. Witnesses described their faces as terrified even as their feet refused to stop. The chroniclers were precise about it. A man named Sebastian Brandt, who served on the city council, wrote it down. So did the physician Paracelsus, who showed up later to try and figure out what he was looking at. By August, the number had climbed past 100. The dancing spilled out of side streets and into the main squares, into the grain market in front of the cathedral. People collapsed from exhaustion, were carried to the side, and the moment they could stand, they started dancing again. Some had strokes, some had heart attacks. Contemporary accounts put the death toll as high as 15 people a day at the peak. The Strasbourg City Council met in emergency session. They consulted physicians who ruled out astrology and demonic possession and landed on a diagnosis: hot blood, an overheating of the body's humors. The prescribed treatment for hot blood was more dancing. The thinking was that the afflicted needed to sweat the sickness out of their bodies until it was gone. So the council met madness with madness. They cleared out 2 guild halls in the open-air grain market. They built wooden stages. They hired professional musicians. Pipers, drummers, and fiddlers were paid by the city to play music day and night, while the afflicted danced on the platforms in front of their neighbors. It didn't work. The music attracted more dancers. The contagion accelerated. People who had come to watch suddenly found their own feet moving and couldn't make them stop. When the dancing kept spreading, the city changed tactics. They blamed a saint, specifically Saint Vitus, a 3rd century martyr who, in the folklore of the Rhineland, had the power to curse people with uncontrollable dancing if he was offended. There was a shrine to him in a grotto up in the Vosges Mountains, about 30 miles from the city. The council loaded the worst of the afflicted into wagons and hauled them up there. At the shrine, priests put red shoes on their feet, walked them around a wooden figure of the saint, and pressed small crosses into their palms. According to the chronicles, this actually seemed to work for some of them. By early September, the dancing was tapering off. Historians and scientists have argued about this outbreak for 500 years. There are 3 serious theories, and none of them quite covers everything. The first is ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that grows on damp rye, and in 1518, the grain in Alsace was bad. Eat enough of it, and you get hallucinations, convulsions, and a burning sensation in your limbs. The problem is that ergot poisoning usually shuts the body down. It cuts off blood flow to the limbs. You can barely walk, let alone dance for 6 days. So most modern researchers don't buy it as the full explanation. The second theory is mass psychogenic illness. The historian John Waller has argued this one most forcefully. The idea is that Strasbourg in 1518 was a city under extreme psychological stress. Famine, disease, fear of damnation. In that kind of environment, a strong cultural belief like the legend of Saint Vitus, cursing sinners with a dancing fit, can take physical form. One person breaks, then another. The brain, under enough pressure, will do what it thinks it's supposed to do. The third theory is religious hysteria, closely tied to the second. There were heretical sects in the region at the time who practiced ecstatic dancing as worship. Some historians think the outbreak may have started in that overlap, between trance ritual and breakdown. The detail that haunts every account is that the dancers didn't want to dance. They begged for help. They cried while they moved. A few asked to be tied down, and when they were untied, they started again. Imagine your body deciding on its own to keep moving for days, your feet bleeding through your shoes, your neighbors watching from windows, whispering that you've been chosen by a saint as punishment for something you can't remember doing. That was the real horror of it. The fact that no one, not the priests, not the physicians, not the dancers themselves, had any idea how to make it stop. By mid-September of 1518, the dancing was over. The stages were torn down. The musicians were paid and sent home. The dead, somewhere between 50 and 400 of them, depending on which chronicle you trust, were buried in the city's churchyards. Strasbourg passed laws banning public music and dancing for the rest of the year, except at weddings. Then the city moved on, the way cities do. And within a generation, the whole thing had slipped into the strange category of events nobody quite believed had happened. But the records are real. The names are there. Sebastian Brandt's notes, the council minutes, a physician's casebook, 400 people in one summer in one city, dancing until their hearts gave out, and no one then or now can fully explain why.